All right, so the floor is open. Nikki?
Yeah. Um, I'll just do it so that somebody can break the silence. Okay.
Yeah, good. Just
I don't know
just
what
break
happened.
the
Anyway,
ice.
so this is going back 2 weeks.
Okay.
Homework from or 2 or 3 weeks. Um, and the thing was, you were talking about pause. Okay.
Yes,
Pause.
pushing pause. Yes.
And so I made myself these little cards. Take a card and you fold it so it stands up. It says pause. And I have it in the kitchen and one next to my computer. And every time I see it, or frequently, I pause. And what I end up doing is I take a breath, a very conscious breath, a deep breath, and then immediately I feel my feet. Without intending, that's just what happens.
Yeah,
And it's
good.
so grounding. I'm standing usually when I do that.
Mhm.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to say, my other little card says the word resolve. And I got that several weeks ago when Kate brought that up.
Yeah,
And you started to, you see, this is how we help each other without even knowing it. So the resolve is about saying to myself, okay, I resolve that today I'm going to meditate. And it's just a reminder. It doesn't always work, but I mostly wanted to say that, you never know that something you say can really help someone else. So I got that from Kate. So thank you, Kate. I'm
yeah.
trying to resolve to meditate more often than I do.
It's really true. And there may be some out there who are going to put little cards around their house that say pause now, because you shared. So that's very helpful. Thank you. Um, Stefan.
I've been noticing a lot about thoughts and um, the reactions that I have to those thoughts. Uh, one
Yes, there are
one of
thoughts
the
about thoughts.
um, one thing that I've noticed is that in many thoughts that I have where I'm following a thought to figure something out, and I finally figure it out, and there's a thought that shows up that says, I wasn't fast enough.
Hmm.
I wasn't fast enough in answering that. Or if I wanted to specifically remember something and I took some time and I remembered it, I noticed that there's a thought of that it wasn't good enough. It wasn't fast enough.
Exactly. Some criticism, a thought of criticism comes up.
It comes up. And I've been noticing that.
Is there a
I mean,
feeling then that follows from that, along with
excuse me?
what feeling comes with that thought?
Well, a word is disappointment, but um, wow, trying to put a word onto that.
The word isn't so important. The noticing the feeling is.
Yeah, it was a negative feeling of
It
that was
is.
suffering.
It's
And
suffering. It's suffering. Suffering follows that thought.
you know what I also noticed is that sometimes when when I'm listening to thoughts and I notice that there's something going on, um, I can feel some suffering in my gut
Mm-mm.
at first. And when I check in with that, um, mm, sorry, I lost it.
Okay. Yeah, it's shy, but I'm happy to hear you're noticing the gut. Um, in my experience, when there's this thought, especially like a self-critical thought, it's helpful for me sometimes because the self-critical thought spatially kind of feels like it's up here, you know, but down here is where the suffering is. Down, I guess you can't see where my hand is. It goes down to my belly, you know. There's something in here that's like you feel a little sick would not be quite the right word, but it's the best one that I'm coming up with right now. There's this kind of contraction and suffering and childlike contraction. And I think shame would be the word I would use, but I don't want the word to get in the way
Yeah,
of
right.
actually feeling it directly.
Hmm.
Because then we have this problem of just putting labels on things. But you can feel the suffering, and so you can then say this is suffering. And if you can say that not just with a neutral tone, like you're just neutrally noting, but with some heart energy of, oh, this is suffering. I'm going to put more words around it, but it's sort of like, wow, I'm doing this to myself. I'm, I'm, I'm having this thought. Something in me is like saying I didn't do it fast enough, and it feels bad. It feels bad to me, like I'm not good enough. I'm trying to put words around it, just because it's there, but there can be this moment of seeing it clearly from the wisdom of the heart when you actually notice it in the gut this way. Notice that that thought hurts, and it creates this sense of insufficiency. It creates a sense of self that hurts. Put it that way. It does.
Hmm.
So you can meet that with your heart when you say this is suffering. It doesn't just have to be pure notation, sort of like
Hmm.
this is suffering. And that might be sufficient, and the thought may come back again and you'll have to do it again. But that would be my sense of where to go with this thought, is to see it as a thought, but then put your presence with where it hurts.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Um, I've been doing that. I've been labeling a feeling as suffering. I've done that a number of times. And what has developed from doing that is a sense of acceptance. And so I've been practicing acceptance with suffering and just staying with it and observing what's going on, feeling what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, I find that helps. And I remembered what I wanted to say before in terms of having a sequence of thoughts that winds up in suffering. I've noticed in retracing the thought pattern that there was some clinging going on. And that clinging took the form of having an expectation that,
Mhm.
I expected a result and it didn't turn out that way. And I'm glad that I noticed that in retracing my steps in, observing what was going on. And so that was helpful.
Yeah. And notice the body, notice the feeling in the body around that clinging and that expectation, just what it actually feels in an embodied way. I think that's important. And yes, you do it over and over, and each time you do it, it like adds some more space around it, some more clarity around it, some more space around it, and different possibilities emerge of their own through that. Different. You might notice a freedom to respond differently at some point. All right, Tanis, do you have a
Oh, my
question to
question
that?
is,
Yeah.
I just am seeing this ability to sense. Is that in any way, does that make a connection for you in any
Yeah.
way?
about this thing you're talking about. That's what I should have started with. And it really doesn't have that much to do with the child. It could be any.
Yes. So, what I would suggest is you just explore. I don't know what a neurodiverse person's experience of proprioception is, but you can find out what yours is, which is to actually notice your body in space. Maybe close your eyes and to feel what that is like, just directly. And, move. My sense of proprioception, I'm no expert in this, but that it also has to do with like knowing the body is moving. There's information there.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a whole thing, if you've ever done Tai Chi or
A little.
Qigong,
Yeah.
it's a powerful thing to bring attention to the body as it moves. It begins to kind of open up the body, open up the energy in a certain way. So there's actually whole meditative schools, if you can say that are based upon this sense of moving the body and feeling it in motion, and knowing it that way, which I believe is almost entirely proprioceptive. There's also interoception, is this other sense where you can actually feel things that are going on inside the body. I don't know exactly where one ends and the other begins and the way that people parse these out. But for instance, the way you feel a stomach ache is interoception, or the way you might vaguely feel it's like something's wrong with your heart or something, but you can't quite. There's all this sort of interoceptive sense in as well. And so those are both active in meditating. I think even when you're still, there can be this sense of the body in space. What I'm actually inviting you to do is to lose the sense that your mind, your vision imposes upon your body, what it looks like, and to feel directly the shape of your body. Does that make sense?
To feel directly
The shape of your
the
body.
shape of your body.
And even leave out body as a kind of organizing principle. Where you put your attention, there's a form there, a form of sensation in a knowing space of awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And just
was going to say, I've worked on balance. I had a knee replacement, all kinds. My balance is all off. And the person I work with told me that I had a poor sense of the P word.
proprioception.
Proprioception.
Yeah.
And
Which is why something like Tai Chi would be really great.
yeah. And I've been kind of working on some exercises with that. And so just from my own personal, yeah. Now, is that a walking meditation? I want to end because I want other people to stop. But
walking meditation in this tradition is kind of the equivalent of Tai Chi. It's a movement meditation. It's feeling the body in motion.
Mhm.
You don't use all the stylized motions, and it's not quite as diverse, shall we say, in terms of you just walk. But it's the same thing, is that it's a way that you raise energy and expand energy in your practice, is to do walking meditation. If you're doing intensive practice, if you do a lot of sitting, your energy starts to go down sitting still so much. So you balance that with walking meditation, which kind of raises the energy, and sitting kind of brings it down, and you find a balance through that way. So yes, walking meditation is like, it's like a version of Qigong.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's a good suggestion. Yeah.
All right.
Do that. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, you're welcome, Tanis.
Hey, Mark. So I don't, there's not really a question here, but maybe an aspiration, or if you have any comments about it, but I feel like I am so often possessed by my thoughts. And I'll give two examples. This morning I was getting ready to work out. It was 6 a.m. I had a coffee, and 3 hours later, I was still sitting in the same spot, and I'd written a bunch of things, work stuff that was fine, and useful thoughts, and that's kind of okay. The thing that's not okay, that's been a frustration. You talked. It may have been. I think it was a while ago, but it was part of the spaciousness talks, and you talked about just pausing to taste your food and to create space around tasting the drink when you're sipping it, and when I go on retreat, silent retreat, I feel like it's the only time I really experience a meal, because when I sit down to dinner with family, friends, whoever, or even myself sometimes, I get caught in conversation, and it's like I don't even like the meal just goes away, and I'm a notoriously fast eater, and it's like my brain is going, and I'm thinking, I'm talking, I'm doing whatever I'm doing. I don't even notice the meal, and I just want to create more space, if you will,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things that I don't seem to be very good at doing, and I guess I'm expressing an aspiration. I want to get better at it. So
Yeah. I think you can take Mickey's kind of thing and put a little pause sign around at the dinner table, at your computer. It's completely possible as you're working to stop and pick up some tea or coffee and actually taste it for a moment, set it down, go back to your work, to kind of put in moments of presence that are not completely locked into the thought, or to look away from your computer. So that's kind of the computer thing. In a conversation at a dinner table, again, you can slow it down a little bit. I mean, obviously, you're there to have the conversation. It's not as though you want to just. I mean, you could just all have a silent meal and use that to taste your food. But for the most part, we're there when we're talking with people to talk with people. So when you're talking, there can be moments where you feel the body. There can be moments when you check in with your feelings. That's really useful when you're talking to people. Even if you're just check in and the feeling is, I'm enjoying having this conversation. If it's just enjoyment, to take a moment to notice it. That just adds the pause to the experience. And I think in a way that is kind of feels natural in terms of the conversation. In conversations, if there's more of a sense of pause, there might be more of a sense of where you want to take the conversation or what's important in the conversation. Sometimes there's a lot of yak, 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 but I always admire people who in conversation can kind of get people's attention and slow it down and ask the question that's really going to elicit greater connection, rather than just ping pong, of this, that. What is it that's actually going to create connection here? Is it a question to ask? Is it a feeling to express? Now, all these things take practice, Nick. They're not going to just appear on their own, I don't think. So that's why I like the little placard, the little note card thing. And I don't know right off the top of my head what would be the right one for the dinner table. Pause might work. Presence. You might have to think about that one. What is it that you want to have kind of interrupt you in your thinking and in your speaking when you're with people? And that can be what you like look down on at the card at your dinner table. You know, you can also get an accomplice in whatever it is you want to. You know, you've got an accomplice sitting next to you, I believe, uh, who could, you know, kind of contract with you a little bit around what it is you want to change in that whole arena of conversation or work or whatever, you know. Team up.
Can I interject?
Sure.
In conversation, and I certainly have a lot of, I like to cook and I like my food to be appreciated. And I oftentimes say, slow down and enjoy your food. And he does. And we have good conversation where he does go back and forth with questions and thoughts. But I think what he said in the very beginning, which is, I don't know if it's a character trait. I don't know if it's something that, I don't know, but it's that he's possessed with like thinking and he's so creative and he's getting all this out and hours pass. And this morning he was upset about it. I said, well, wasn't it fun? And he said, yeah. I said, then why are you upset about it? So
Because it's the possession part of it, I think
right. And I don't know.
Troubling. He doesn't,
Yeah.
you don't feel free in it all the time. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah.
Something feels kind of compulsive about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be helpful to break in, you know, in terms of dinner conversation, maybe savor is the right word. I kind of like that word, savor, which can refer both to the food and to whomever you're with and their presence and just what's happening between you. They're just that moment of savoring could be helpful. When you're in your kind of creative role, I'm not exactly sure what it is you might want to interrupt, but do you ever just like look out the window?
Yeah, I do. I have a practice at work where I try to just stop at the top of the hour and like, pause and do that. And that's definitely helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a practice when I remember it, which is to stand up from the chair and move because my body really needs it.
Yeah.
And trouble starts to happen when I sit too long in one place. So that's an added motivation for me but just to like change what you're looking at and really see it. You know, I got some nice things to look at out my window.
Me too.
Yeah. The difficulty of all this is you have to remember to do it. And that kind of possession, it just sort of takes over and drives. So whatever you could do to remind yourself, set something on your phone to go off periodically, a little chime. Those are out there. Or a little note card. I think computers themselves can be programmed to give interruptions. I've never used one, but I know that they exist. And let me know how it goes. And in a way, that's kind of what the spaciousness stuff is about freedom. It's about the freedom in the moment to actually choose and choose wisely how to direct your attention, how to direct your energy. And so when we get in those sort of compulsive tracks, that's what we're losing. We're losing the space. We're losing the freedom that comes with the space. The space is a stepping stone to freedom. All right, anyone else? We have a little more time. So, Andra.
So I've been very dedicated to meditating every morning when I get up,
Is that new?
using your recording.
All right.
Because otherwise I'd just be lost in my thoughts. So at least there's
That's
some.
why they exist. That's why those recordings exist.
Yeah. But I have to say that I feel like I'm pretending to meditate.
In what way?
It feels like I'm just faking it till something else happens that I think is meditating.
What do you think would be? In other words, you have this idea of what is real meditation that you're not fulfilling. What would it be that would meet your criteria?
Um, trying, just letting the words sort of wash over me and not working so hard.
Okay. So, not working so hard. Does it feel like when you listen to the recordings that you have to work hard to do what I'm instructing you to do?
Yeah,
Yeah. What's the work of it? What feels hard?
like, okay, scalp, scalp, scalp. Where's the scalp? What's the scalp?
Just
What does
finding
it
the
feel
body
like?
is hard. Just
Yeah.
finding the body is hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There is some work there. And, it's pointing out to you that maybe you live more in your mind than in your body, and it's a little difficult to find the body. But, every time you do, you strengthen that ability to actually be in your body.
That's why it's called practice.
That's why it's called practice. Yeah. So I encourage you not to let an ideal interfere with what's actually happening in the practice, which is, yes, it's difficult to find your scalp. When I say scalp, maybe it's difficult to feel anything there. But just in doing it and feeling maybe something slight, you're doing it. If you let go of the idea of what that's supposed to be like, you're doing it. It's what's actually there. It's what's actually there for that moment. And for that moment, you've let go of thinking enough to even be in the body. And so the work of the meditation is not just, finding the sensation. It's also letting go of thinking enough to even be able to do that. And then a thought arises anyway, And when you notice it, you choose to not continue it, but you go back to what my voice is saying, for example, go back to the body. There's work happening there. There's something changing in the mind. Your mind's doing something it's not used to doing. And it will get easier, I think, with time, as you kind of build those neural pathways, as you get more accustomed to it. Maybe it will feel less effortful. All right, everybody, we've come to the end of our time. So have a good week and keep practicing and bring back your reports for next week. All right, take care.